Harvey.
I'm here.
Frank Gillespie.
Here.
Denise Lustelo.
Present.
Stacy Mattina.
Here.
Jerry Mills.
Here.
Denise Rushing. Jim Comstock. Jeff Smith.
Here.
Jerry Luis.
Here.
Jim Avery.
Here.
Suzanne Lyons.
Here.
Okay. Well, next up is approval of the minutes from our meeting in September. Anybody have any additions or corrections? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have public comment. This is a time for anybody to address the commission on any matter that's not on our agenda but within our jurisdiction. Try to keep comments to 2 minutes, please.
I would just like to say thank you for allowing me to serve on this commission for 3 years. It was an enjoyable experience. I learned a lot. I definitely learned that you shouldn't pull any kind of public documents regarding the incorporation of a city. That can get you dismembered from a lot of different areas of the city. But other than that, I do appreciate you. I think what I learned from here, and have a good day.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment? Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. It's basically authorizing paying our bills. Any questions or comments about the consent? Oh, here comes Commissioner Comstock. Morning, Jim.
Good morning. How are you today?
That is just in time for the consent agenda.
Oh, cheers.
No. Okay, well, if there's no questions or comments, I entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 5. This is continued from November 20th. We review and amend as determined by the Commission LAFCo's adopted local procedural guidelines for MSRs that was adopted back in 2003. And LAFCo's action on April 15, 2009 regarding establishment of MSR Advisory Committee. And LAFCo's adopted policies and procedures for MSRs that was adopted in 2009.
Okay, thank you. Just a short recap. There was some discussion in the minutes from the last meeting. And what we've done is, if you recall at the last meeting, and I'm saying, repeating a lot of this for Denise, because Denise is new to the commission. Do you all know Denise Lustelo?
Yeah, maybe. I'm sorry, I'm probably remiss in not introducing you. Denise Lustelo is the newest member. She was appointed yesterday. Or confirmed, whatever the right word is. And she also happens to be the current mayor of Clearlake.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'll be here.
And Mr. Luis?
He is our alternate for the city.
That would be nice to know, thank you.
Right, he continues as alternate.
Right, and as far as the alternate goes, I need to talk to the mayor's select committee, or to Maria Turner, the board of supervisors, to make a decision, because the alternates were rotated between the cities, and I wanted to know what the term of the alternate was, and it was determined a couple of years ago, and I don't recall at this point. So the alternate may be the person helping Stacy. Who is the other?
Councilmember Shield is our
Shield from the city of Lakeport. It could be that if that's the determination made, I'll find out from Maria. And I received a confirmation email from Maria last evening about the change. So anyway, So that'll happen. I guess for the next agenda, I'm getting off on subject because I shouldn't. So I'll talk about an item that I have at a later time. So anyway, this one here is, we looked at our municipal service review policy and our procedural guidelines for service reviews. And last time I didn't have any, I mentioned I don't really have any problem with either one, except that we need to update them per the law. There is no mention of the service review committee if you wish to continue with the service review committee. So that's my statement on those procedural guidelines. The other item that I've added here is we're always concerned about, well, what goes into an MSR, and it's time. There's several issues here, and so what I did is I did a methodology and assumptions page in your packet, and what that does is explain what are the things that we look at when we do a service review? Because for budgetary reasons, I want to contain the content of the service review so that we don't go far afield and spend tens of thousands of dollars doing a service review, which is really not needed. The purpose of the service review is to support the sphere of influence. In some areas, if we were in, say, a growth mode, and take a district, for example, like Caleomi County Water District down south, what we would do is we would do a service review and based on growth and water capacity and several other issues here, we would establish a sphere of influence either the same as the district boundary, larger than the district boundary, or smaller than the district boundary, or if we felt that consolidation with another district would be appropriate, we could establish a sphere that would be a zero sphere, where there would be no sphere. It would be a zero sphere. It wouldn't be a sphere. So we would signal to an agency that we want that agency to be dissolved or incorporated in with another agency. So anyway, the methodology and assumptions is important, and that's essentially what we do when we go do a service review, very methodically. The other issue is that we could write a book on every one of these subjects, pretty much. So the idea is containment, is that I don't want to be, we don't have a large enough budget to write a book on, and on every bullet point here, and we don't have a need to write a book on every point here. Remember, the purpose of the service review, in addition to supporting the sphere, kind of a subcategory, is to help the district or the city or whatever in the service review by shedding a light on issues that are occurring. And so with that, the reason I'm bringing this up now is because next month is our budget. And if we're going to be doing a lot of extras that are really not needed, we're going to need a bigger budget. And there's no two ways around it. If you ask me, do we need a bigger budget? It depends on the direction you give me. I'm not sure we do need a bigger budget. We've been progressing along on reviews, and I'll talk about those later. So right now, one thing is that, we need to take a look at our policies, which you have in your packet, and the methodology and assumptions that you have in your packet, and give me some direction with respect to these items. And that's my speech.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Jim.
John, thank you. That I do not believe we need to write a book on each of these. But bureaucracy can get just as big as it wants. And I tend to want to shrink bureaucracy. I think we need to do what's essential and don't do any more and don't add to the amount of paperwork, time, and effort. We have to do them, we do them, and we do just what's required. We can go out and we can look for anything. and spend how much time, how much money. I don't believe we need to increase our budget to just increase, you know, what would be our end game for doing? Where would we decide to, okay, enough is enough, okay, go a point till gas. And I believe we should be precise and do just what we have to do, not trying to abdicate our responsibility, not trying to not do our job, but let's not find a reason to grow. So I would believe we should do just what they're required to do, meet the requirements. If there's something glaring that's going to come out, then we'll deal with it.
Okay, thank you. I agree with you. Anyone else have comments? Then I'll leave it.
I know I'm new, but this is just my rule of thumb overall. Quality, not quantity. And as long as we're providing quality of the things that we must do, the quantity of extras should be limited.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Is this about something specific? Are we spending a really lot of money on doing municipal service reviews? Is that what this
Well,
came up?
it all kind of started with the grand jury report. I mean,
okay.
for me to implement the grand jury report's findings would cost us, you know, a lot of money, and I've got an estimate that you guys aren't going to like. And so it's your decision if you want to follow it or not, or just continue down the same path. Another issue is, do we need committees to do an MSR? I don't know of any other LAFCo that has. In fact, I used to have one in Calaveras County, and folks were going to the state. They were submarining projects from other districts. It just became totally unacceptable. We abolished the committee because what we did instead of that is if we have a special expertise needed. The only complaints I've really heard about MSRs from districts has been like a fire district. Okay, it's a good idea to have someone that knows about fire writing the service review. That's really important. And so that doesn't mean that the person that knows about fire, we've got a lot of retired fire resources in this county. Jim McMurray is one who, actually Jim McMurray helped me in another LAFCo doing a fire MSR because he knew about fire and I don't. So anyway, that's the focus, that if we're going to do anything is find or retain, if necessary, expertise like in wastewater treatment. With wastewater treatment, Scott knows a lot, so I can just, bend his ear. But so that's the thing, is that I just want to do like the old saying in Lassen County, is lean and mean, and just meet the purposes of the service review, the law, the requirement, which is to analyze now 6 factors, and to determine and to have it support the sphere of influence, realizing that all of you have a lot of discretion on content and what the sphere would be. That's your job, is to evaluate and consider all the factors, and then you draw a conclusion. Likewise, if we have an annexation, for example. So that's kind of where the end game is. For me, to me, it's budget. It's budget and where we want LAFCo to go. And I will quote one of my attorneys, not this guy. He would say something different. It doesn't have to be more than it really is. So that's, I'm sure he knows who it is, but I'm not going to say anything. So anyway.
Oh, come on. You're teasing us.
What's that? I know. Actually, his name is John Kenny. He used to be a county council in Shasta County, and he was my LAFCo council in Lassen and Modoc. And it's just like lean and mean, and just cover the subject, focus, just keeping focus, and that's just what we need to do. And for me, I know my time constraints, and so I've got, I have a person, Jennifer Stevenson, who works with me, and she's good. She's working with me on the watershed protection and MSR, for example. That's going to go to the county this week. I'm hoping, but I do have to review it myself because I don't want anything going to the county without me looking at it.
So the draft is almost ready?
It's, yeah. I didn't get an email this morning, but it will be ready in the next day or two. I thought it was going to be ready before the end of the year, but as you know, the 2 weeks before the holiday, nobody does anything. In fact, last week I sent out about 20 emails to various people prodding for information, including Jim. So anyway, those are some thoughts.
Yes.
I agree with John about use of subcommittees. I think we should keep it lean and mean as you suggested. Sometimes subcommittees take a life of their own and you discover hidden agendas that you didn't know about, that all of a sudden they blossom into areas you really don't want to go. If we could avoid those kind of situations, I think we're much better off, and keep the professional group doing these in their part.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff?
You know, with the commission itself making the final decision and, you know, expertise that John has or whoever he might bring in to, you know, look at certain MSRs, I think that is the most efficient way to go. We have the chance to make changes or whatever, and especially with John meeting with the either councils or commissions or whatever to go over these before they come to us. I think it's, you know, it's unnecessary to do any kind of extra committee. We can iron it out here in the end, and we have. We've made changes or asked John to go further, and so I think it's working real well the way it is. And you know, I can see that the cities can't afford, or the county can't afford to put any more money into LAFCo. That's why spin our wheels and do more than really necessary to do. And the special districts too, they can't afford it, you know, to keep feeding it.
Okay. Anyone else? Now I'll open it up to public comment. You're first.
Thank you. As a full-time volunteer in the County of Lake and the appointed outreach and education and public involvement and participation work group chair for your NEPS stormwater permit compliance program, I know how difficult it is to get people involved at an appropriate level. It's very hard to educate people that just walk in the door. Very few people are willing to take the time to read. The members of this committee are not sabotaging or submarining or overspending. In fact, we donate our time. And we have a body of knowledge that comes from serving on the Clearlake Advisory Committee, from understanding your aquatic plant management plan, from grasping the complexities of your stormwater management issues, and those tie directly to your sphere of influence for the Watershed Protection District. I have no desire to cost any extra money. In fact, I too believe in lean and mean, and this is as mean as it gets, because we have struggled politely to assist the executive director with our local knowledge and our willingness to spend time to seriously study the issues. We're not adversaries, we're supporters. You know from years of experience that I have taken a lot of trouble to help this committee and to help John to clarify things. It's on my own time, and it's with my dedicated knowledge and effort to learn how this government operates. So my study of this issue, of course, I reviewed the policies and procedures for municipal service reviews as we did together a few years ago, and I provide here some information that's taken from that lovely publication that John sent, the California Within Limits from the former Secretary of State.
They all have a copy of it.
No, they don't have a copy of what I provided. I wrote some information for everybody, excerpting those pertinent issues related to public participation and the relationship between this discussion here and the specific issue of the sphere of influence for the Watershed Protection District. So if you would sign, please.
Oh, now.
This is a memorandum from me with information regarding your decision-making process here and how critical it is to this watershed protection district at this time, because it has legal responsibilities that it needs to fulfill in accordance with the county government responsibility for permit compliance. Alan? Sure. So, the timeliness of your choices for doing municipal service reviews, how you would put those into your work plans, I have never seen a cost estimate for a particular review. That it will take so many hours of John's time, so many hours of Jennifer's time, so many hours of your time, so many hours of staff time. The standards for the inputs are not bloated. They are exactly the minimum amount of information. And in this case, the minimum amount of information for the district called watershed protection is not there. Now, I'm glad John has compiled a draft. I think that the committee should receive the draft. We have contributed a substantial amount of work to the understanding of the district in good faith, as your supporters. We are a committee that serves because we want to help get this district clarified so that we can actually fund it appropriately and manage clearly. That's our end desire. And we have worked very hard on these. So I would hope you would consider these comments before you make your decision, because one of the significant complications that we've had in dealing with the Board of Supervisors over the sales tax initiative, for example, is that even Supervisor Rushing said, we don't understand the governance of it. You're going to ask the public to vote on a sales tax measure, that they would like to know the governance body that will actually take care of this. And the report from the special, what's so special about special districts, says that the district is a separate legal entity. It's a separate legal entity. It has as much requirement for authority and accountability as your fire protection district or the water district or the city. And so to infer that the process of Municipal Service Review Committee is deleterious is very unfortunate, because I will mention this factor. The State Office of Planning and Research guidelines for municipal service reviews recommends that any service review, any district service review that is complex and possibly controversial should employ a stakeholders committee, a group of diverse stakeholders, because the water purveyors, the landowners, the environmental protection issues for habitat restoration, all of these are critical to understanding the sphere of influence of the watershed protection district. And here's the nut. In the new permit for the stormwater program, there's a conflict in compliance with that permit that has gone to the Central Valley Water Quality Control Board. It's an issue for all rural communities like us, for small phase 2 municipal service review, storm systems. It is that we have a district that is delineated as the entire county line, but the municipal small separate storm sewer system permit is restricted to the area where the sewer system is operated, and that is less than the wildlands of this county, which are owned by the federal agencies. So our requirement for meeting our TMDL on this lake is 73 is 2,000 kilograms per year within the storm sewer system areas, the urbanized areas, the cities, and the communities around the shoreline. The total requirement for managing nutrients in this lake for the whole county area is 81,000 kilograms. So, 87,000. So 85,000 are coming from lands we don't control. The state can't help us manage that input to the lake. The need for that sphere of influence to define what the county agency can actually manage is fundamental to understanding our permit compliance with the state of California. With LAFCo sand, we had this discussion. It took 3 years to finally come to an agreement that the service areas for the sanitation district should be within the predictable service area. They're never going to Lake Pillsbury. They're never going to Cal Mountain. So that's why you want to have a sphere that's actually rational. And I don't know, John's letter to Mr. De Leon in May of 2012 said that LAFCo had adopted the sphere in 1985. Well, this was in line with the historical piece of progress where everybody just had to adopt a sphere. So I think it's probably where that happened, but I would wonder whether there was ever an analysis of the sphere related to the district's capacities to serve. So that's
Quick answer, no, there was never.
So that needs to be done, and that is required by law.
The watershed protection district and the air quality district, I'm mentioning the air quality district on purpose, and the vector control district, these are examples of county-wide districts. The air quality district, they were smart, they had a lobby. The Air Quality Association got themselves exempt from LAFCo. The flood control district didn't, which is the watershed protection district, neither did the vector control district. The flood control district is a county-wide district, and it provides watershed services countywide. And so the sphere for that is countywide at this point. With LAFCo sand, as you recall, we reduced the sphere to those areas within the county's planning boundaries, I believe, and or within existing districts. So we did do this. And so Betsy brings up a point on the watershed protection district is that I'll need to hire an expert in biology and engineering to accomplish some of these things with critical analysis, and that will take budget. And so the question is, do we need to go there? And that's what you need to evaluate this qualitatively rather than quantitatively. And we just do an analysis. The watershed protection, I don't really want to use it because it's pending right now. The governance is the Board of Supervisors acting as a watershed protection district. Their accounting is done through the county and the public works. And so we're identifying this, and there were a few items that were brought up at the last meeting that the MSR should shed a light on. And those items are what should happen. And so the determination of this, it would appear to me that if there's watersheds within Lake County, they should be included in the watershed protection district, not just Clearlake, like Upper Puda and Upper Puda Creek watershed. And that's all within the area in South County. So anyway, it's debatable at what level of analysis do you need to complete an MSR. Do you need an analysis that's nothing, like in 1985? The law now requires service reviews, so that at least there's a little science thrown into the mix. And do you need an analysis that is, 500 pages in length, or one that's maybe 50 pages in length? That's an evaluation for each LAFCo. Are you done? No, with the comments, because I'm not done.
That's fine.
The service review guidelines, The AB 2838 was written and it said the state shall prepare service review guidelines by, was it 2004? It was 2004. Nobody even knew what an MSR was by 2004. They never adopted it by 2004. And so they did adopt them in 2003. Do you have a copy of them? I forgot my copy. So the history was nobody had done an MSR except an MSR in San Luis Obispo County, where somebody took a shot at it. The MSR guidelines came out, and later on, the requirements for MSRs got to be 2008, that LAFCos had to prepare these updates and update a sphere as necessary every 5 years thereafter. Well, a lot of LAFCos dug in with both feet, had high budgets. They got these MSRs done. I worked for one of them that was $450,000 to do an MSR for all the districts in the county, and in Lake County as well as most other rural counties. It was an increment of let's prioritize these things and let's get water, wastewater done first. Let's get fire, and let's move on to the cemetery districts and lighting districts later. And so that's what happened. The guidelines, I think the guidelines, frankly, I don't know any LAFCos that follow them. In fact, they don't even look at them.
Because they're guidelines,
I think they're ill-begotten. If anything, they need to be rewritten. That's why we established local guidelines that are what we want to see in MSR and adopt protocols. The question is how much do you want in an MSR? Do you want a book? Do you want a newspaper article? So that's the discretion. And so what I've tried to do is contain it within the budget. And that's what I want to do. If you allocate $5,000, okay, we'll do a $5,000 MSR. The question becomes, is it adequate? Well, there are no standards for what goes into the MSR. You're required to meet 6 findings, determinations, and that's it. There's, to my knowledge, been no lawsuits over MSR's content. Do you know of any that have happened? Now, we almost got sued in Yuba County, and my attorney there, actually, it was you and Michael, it was 2 of them, advised that there's no content requirements in MSR. So, okay, let's just cover the subject. Let's see if we can help the districts and move on from there. And then later on, like Calliope Water District, I think we did an MSR in there. We shined a light on several items there, and they've taken care of them. We did another MSR last year, and they have remedied their issues. Granted, times changed, and over time, they had a recession and they annexed an area that doesn't, nevertheless, the circumstances changed, so we took a look at it. An MSR committee, from my understanding of the MSR committee, it was formed to focus on the watershed protection district, and for ethical reasons and directions that you gave me before was send the district the MSR first. And I don't want to get, that's the reason we have public hearings on MSRs, and the public have a right to testify at the public hearings on content of the MSRs. And that has happened. Normally what happens is the MSR is sent, and I can say this for every LAFCO I work for, and I'm sure those that he represents too, that the MSR is sent to the agency. And the agency reviews it and comes back with things, and once in a while you get into conflicts, but the agencies, a lot of them tend to forget that the MSR is there to help them. It's not a gotcha document, like I said, that we're going to do that. So a lot of input can be commenting on items at the commission level. What I would be concerned about with that is, for example, someone getting, you need a full hydraulic analysis of this. We need to know exactly what's in the water basin, and which will require a hydrologist to do a study, and it would cost $50,000. I don't think that's within your scope. Does it really matter what that's going to be for, what the results are going to be for the sphere of influence? In some cases, somewhat in Caledonia Water District it does, because they have a finite amount of water. So, but they aren't, these studies have been done, and so they're noted in the MSR, and you have bulletin 118 from DWR that's a general assessment. I mean, I did something similar, I think it was the city of Williams. No, one of those districts on the west side of the Sacramento Valley, the water quality is poor. And so it's a mention or a nod or shine the line in the MSR that we've got poor water quality, therefore you're going to have expensive costs of water treatment. And of course the districts all know that because they have expensive water treatment costs. There's also issues with the one comment, and I've been thinking about this with volunteers, and I know it's come up with the county. I'm going to put on my administration hat for a minute, and I don't know how Lake County has dealt with this. I'm going to ask Alan probably to help a little bit. Is liability when you have a committee. And by the way, MSR committees, they don't exist anywhere else. But public input does. And so public input is valuable. I think you need to, per your direction a couple of years ago, was meet with the district before, meet with the district like on the Watershed Protection District MSR. Before I bring it back to LAFCo, I'm going to want to go to the Board of Supervisors. I guess because they're the Board of Directors. And present the MSR on a timed item, I guess. For example. Anyway, there's this notion of liability out there that we don't have liability insurance for that. And I don't know what the county does. They're not paying volunteers, so there's that issue's not out there. But the question is do you want volunteers, or should committees, subcommittees of the commission on the budget committee, be the two commissioners? And that's typically the way it's done. I don't think we've done a budget committee in this county, but in Colusa County, I have a budget committee. And in there's one other, Plumas County, I have a budget committee. Two members of the commission, we go through the budget reports, and discuss all the line items, and we get all the data from the year before, the last couple of years, and figure out what the costs are. So, I mean, there's a lot of that going on too. And so, but anyway, so that's my comment, is that you do have this avenue of public input on the process, and people have been very helpful in providing public input. When I see that there becomes conflict between the public input and the agencies, and we get in the middle of it. And I've got a prime example in Calaveras County where there was some public input. The district took exception, but PO'd at LAFCo over it. And it's not our fault that the district had an OSHA violation. The fact is they did. And and we found that out from public input. So I'm not saying public input is not valuable. It is. The district has an OSHA violation. Okay, and they got fined. Well, why the district didn't tell us? Well, they should. So there's that check that is what I would say is a good reason for some public involvement. The Commission on Local Governance for the 21st century kept banging on the same drum. Public has been disengaged. The public has been, shut out of the process. And so you read, what they did was this Commission on Local Governance, they produced this report, and it went to the legislature. And the legislature made a lot of changes to that report, and the end result was AB 2838. And it, basically for public input, for an MSR, we need to provide a 21-day legal notice of a public hearing. And for a sphere of influence, 21-day public notice. For an annexation, we need to do a 21-day public notice and notify everyone within the annexation area and within 300 feet of the annexation area. voters and landowners, which if we do, unless there's over 1,000 in aggregate, then we don't. But that's all that came out of it in the law. So, other than having the public hearing and garnishing public input, that's what there is. And this way, it's advertised for everybody to see. Because we do it in like Clearlake has got an MSR that's going to be coming up soon. There'll be a public notice in the Clearlake Observer, and everybody will be on notice. That I'm not going to advertise to the record B because that's not the paper there. But anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents, and you can see that a little bit. I'm just trying to throw out both sides of this issue. Is that there are several, not both sides, but many sides of the issue. So the bottom line comes down is, what are you willing to pay for? And I want to look at it that way. Okay, we've established a budget pattern over the last 10 years. So anyway.
Right?
Oh, yeah. I just had 2 questions. One of them is that you talk about the flood control and water conservation district, and then you talk about the watershed protection district. And I think that gets really confusing because it's the same thing under a different name, right?
She brings up an issue that we found in the MSR. Some of the budget units in the county are called flood control districts.
Yeah.
There are it's all been converted. That flood control district has been morphed into the watershed protection district. The budget units and some of the stuff didn't follow along with that. And as a result, we found some irregularities in some of the, or at least Jennifer did, because she's a finance person.
Oh.
And she found some which you guys hinted on, I know, on how revenues are reported. So that we're dealing with the county on that.
Right. I just think that that's one of the things that happens is it ends up being interchangeable, and so people who haven't read all this stuff maybe don't know what you're talking about when you talk. It sounds like it's 2 different districts. It's not. It's the same.
Well, yeah, that's an issue. Is there's a lot of, and that was another issue that we need to shed a light on in the MSRs. Just what is the watershed protection? And just what do they do? What's the role? What's the shortcomings? I think some of the shortcomings is funding, the Quagga-Mussa program. But anyway, that's not what we're here talking about today. That's just one example. But it's a good one.
Well, and the other thing that I wanted to ask, because you brought up the sphere of influence and having to hire people. I know with other MSRs that we've done, we get the information from the district or the city or whatever it is. So can't the watershed protection district, don't they know what their sphere is, and can't they just tell us? And can't they give us the input to say, this is what it is, this is what we'd like it to be?
Well, yeah.
We have to hire somebody to tell us that.
Yeah, they can, no, we don't have to. We have to do an MSR, and
right.
I know what their sphere is because I have a document that tells me what their sphere is.
Right.
And so my concern is working with some of the districts, is some of the districts do not want to, and I'm not pointing my finger at the watershed district or any district in Lake County, but I've had experiences elsewhere that the districts are just not quite up front with some stuff. And so what we do is we come and we look at grand jury reports, like we do some diligence or we do some verifying, and a lot of times we miss things, and that shows up because some member of the public brings something up at a public hearing, and the commission says, okay, we need to look at that. And then so part of the process is we hold a public hearing and or a workshop. Probably in a lot of cases we'll do a workshop first, and then actually adopt a service review. We're doing it here, but in some, we didn't want, and when you were on the commission, I remember you saying, oh, I don't want to read the same stuff twice. But maybe for some of these districts, what we should do is in a workshop where you don't have the document in front of you. I don't understand why you don't want to read it twice. So what we could do is review have a workshop on, say, fire districts, and I don't provide the document to you. I provide you like a matrix or something, or what did we find, a summary, and that's what we do in Plumas County. is we have a workshop, we find out, well, here are the findings and the PowerPoint presentations of what we did. Commissioners say, something's hinky about this. And so we go and look about this one district, and by the way, you missed the fact that there was embezzlement there, and there were people arrested, the grand jury was looking at this stuff. And then I'd go back and say, the grand jury is not supposed to tell us anything, nor is it public record, and I wish I would have known, but it does have an effect upon whether or not they have an ability to serve. So I have that issue too. So, you know, I think the public input is valuable. The problem is some of this information we can't get at, because I don't know what the grand jury is looking at here, and nor am I supposed to know, and they're not supposed to tell me, and it might be something I really want to know. So the MSR comes out, 2 months later, the grand jury report comes out and says, these guys are really horrible. And it happened to me in, I think it was Chester, in the PUD in Chester, where the guy embezzled all this money and he got arrested and all that, and we didn't even know it in the MSR because nobody would say anything. The citizens didn't know, the district wouldn't say anything, and of course the grand jury, there was nothing. So there's all that, and that leads me to a point that the MSRs are very, the lifespan of the content, backup information of the MSR is really good for about 1 day. And then a week later it's stale, 2 weeks later it's really bad, and a year later it's really bad. So the MSR is part of it is two things. There's an open file document, which is all the background stuff. And then there's the resolution with the findings. That is the real MSR. That's the 6 findings that they're required to do. That's the service review. And then there's this background report. And we need to, with that background report, is we need to update that periodically. And we have a policy that says if we get a change of organization, oh, by the way, the district, you're going to have to update this information in the service review. So there's a couple ways to get it updated before we actually change a boundary. So anyway, I'm just putting it in those terms. Okay.
Thank you.
Mike?
Are we being recorded?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For the record, my name is Mike Dunlap. I'm a member of the public. I've also volunteered to serve on the Municipal Service Review for the Watershed Protection District. I've been listening to all of you who are paid individuals to represent members of the public. And I haven't heard anybody say anything this morning that tells me that you keep foremost in your mind that we, the public, do not yield our sovereignty to you. Your job is to represent it. I've been hearing a lot of conversation about the expense of a municipal service review. Well, I don't know how much John has spent, and I don't know how much John has spent on an attorney or attorneys for this particular review, the Watershed Protection District. But I know that I haven't cost this committee anything. I know I haven't cost the county anything, except maybe some inconvenience and some embarrassment, because over a year ago I started arguing with one of the county employees about what the interpretation of the law creating the Watershed Protection District should be. I went to the county council and asked the county council to go to the legislative office and get the letter of intent. County council said, I don't work for you, I work for the county. I can be sent to the legislative office to do something by the Board of Supervisors or by one of the directors of one of the departments. I went to the department director declined to do that. Well, finally we created enough stir clap, apparently, that it got done. And Anita went and got the legislative letter of intent, and lo and behold, notwithstanding the fact that, I believe, Jeff, you were one that at some point said, we don't even know exactly what the Watershed Protection District is in the last 5 years. I know Denise said it in a public meeting. Well, it turns out that it's not the flood control district, it's the Watershed Protection District, and it has some pretty specific enabling legislation in that letter, okay? And they haven't done it, and the county hasn't done it. So going to the county and asking the county, you know, what are you supposed to do, is not going to get an answer that we need, you need, because your responsibility is to look at what the county is doing, what this district is doing, and tell them you're not doing what you're supposed to do under the legislation. That's one of your responsibilities. And instead, you're sitting here this morning saying, well, let's do away with the public input to the extent that we can, because we have a committee that's voluntary. And instead, we'll have a public hearing that we'll publish in, what, the Observer? How many subscribers are the
For the watershed district, it's going to be both papers.
Great. You know what the total subscription rate is for the county?
I don't know.
No, you don't.
Oh, well, there's no reason I should know that.
Well, how about the idea is that this commission is to reach out to the public for involvement. Is that not correct? Am I missing something? If the idea is that you're supposed to put it in a public notice and get the public to come to the meeting for their input, how are you going to contact the public in this county? What are the levels of contact that you have available to you? The Observer, the Record B, LAFCo News. That's about it, right? Do you have any idea what the total subscription of those three is for the total versus the total population of the county? How do you know you're getting to the public? Come on, people, do your job.
Any other? Alan? You did, only one of them.
Subscribership. Morning, Chairman Rowe, members of the commission. I guess I'll try to focus my comments on a few things. Seems like we've been taking a number of different tracks here. But I guess the first question would be, is this agenda item proposing any changes to the existing procedural guidelines other than the question of the committee at this point?
I can speak to that. Well, the agenda item is written fairly generically, the action on it, and it's just to review the protocols, which is those 2 pages, and then to provide direction for staff for any inclusion, deletion, amendment to any of the above, which is the agenda item, or take action regarding any of the above. So it's pretty generic. I'm not sure if the commission is going to take any action today, or it may if it so chooses.
So I forgot to say, I appreciate you guys continuing this in the November meeting. So is the methodology and assumption is something new?
That's something that I put forward today, because what I wanted to do is give a basic content of what goes into MSRs. And it's just not Lake County MSRs, it's MSRs in general. That's kind of what goes into it. There's just things that we look at. Information from the districts, normally we verify it. And that's where Mike's comment is on point, is that we verify it sometimes, but sometimes we need to hold a public hearing and find out, well, is this, we try to do the best we can, but maybe a member of the public might know something about Chester PUD's, embezzlement that we don't know about when we're doing the MSR. And so, unfortunately, we can't write anything in the MSR because it's under investigation. So but in that case, but there's other issues. There's been a lot of things shed to light on up through the MSR committee, and I want to thank Betsy again in public. I did last time. Do it again for her numerous emails on issues that they have seen, which tells me and told you there are issues that the MSR should address. It's just that it's, like I said, an evaluation, and so the MSR is hopefully addressing these issues.
Okay. I'm sure all of the commission members are aware, just to reiterate, on behalf of the administrative office, we share some of the expressed concerns that the commission members have mentioned here today about the budget, and just the uniqueness of the situation of how LAFCo is funded is this commission sets the budget, and then basically the special districts and cities and the county are sent the bill, of which the county pays a third of that, so the largest single entity that pays that, excluding our special districts that contribute, of course. And so, we're particularly sensitive to this issue, and would like to, just implore the commission to consider something that we've talked about before, and was actually brought up by Mr. Benoit and Mr. Brown back in 2012, of considering adopting coterminous spheres of influence for any district or entity that has not updated one. There are a number of entities out there that they aren't required to be updated, or they're required to be updated, but because of no plan for growth or anything like that, they are not proposed to do that. In my understanding from the discussion that Mr. Benoit and Mr. Brown had shared with the commission in the past, is that this would not require an update. And so outside of that situation, the funding for an MSR, sphere of influence update, or any CEQA documents associated with those type of things would be deferred to the agency that was proposing that, rather than the responsibility lying on LAFCo to do that. I mean, it seems to make common sense that the agency that is proposing some sort of growth would bear the financial responsibility for preparing the necessary documents to make that happen. And I only brought a few copies, but most of you will recall that the Board of Supervisors sent a letter to the Commission in March of 2013 related to a number of these issues, and actually proposed some policy language that the LAFCo would adopt as part of this, I guess, procedural guidelines, part of the local policy related to these things. So I think I have about 9 or 10 copies, but I'd just like to share those with the commission and refresh everyone's memory on that, and just ask on behalf of the Board of Supervisors that this again be considered as part of the local guidelines related to this. To us, it seems to make sense that the agency that is proposing that growth should bear the financial responsibility for making that happen. And it seems to alleviate most of this concern out here about, an MSR taking some crazy track and costing everyone a lot of money.
John, do you have anything you'd like to reply to that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to put this one into context here. And this is, the way, first of all, the sphere of influence is something you determine. It's as determined by the commission. And it's a probable boundary. The funding of LAFCOs is, in this county, a third county, third district, and a third city. And that's all prescribed in the government code. And the issue that comes up in LAFCOs, not only here, is that why should the county be subsidizing the city's sphere, or why should, because the Kalamazoo Water District is costing us $100,000 in a lawsuit, why should we pay for that lawsuit? He's got more experience in Nevada County on that part of it, but it's expensive. So the question, and I agree with this financial information, but the law doesn't have to be fair. I've got a county where there's 20,000 or 30,000 residents, and there's 1,500 that live in a city. The 1,500 people have to pay $50,000 to support half of LAFCO, and the county pays $50,000. Well, I'm the first to admit that's not fair, but that's the law. That's just what it is. And in that particular county, I followed a guy that used to charge districts to have their MSRs prepared. And inevitably, he got fired over that because he created so much ill will throughout the county that everybody hated him. What a poor guy. But so And that is the problem. We do have a policy. If someone wants their MSR done now, and it's not in our work program, then, well, okay, that's fine, they can pay for it. And we've implemented that with the Hidden Valley Lake. We did an MSR on them in 2004 or something like that. And they paid to have it done. So getting on this financing thing is you can follow what the law says, which is easy for all of us. You can do a thing that we're gonna charge districts to do service reviews. That was tried in Shasta County too, and they just got in a lawsuit over it, and they tried to bill this district $16,000. I think the lawsuit was settled for $4,000, but it cost the LAFCo a substantial amount of monies in legal costs to reach that agreement. So I'm thinking that the modified approach is what we do already. If someone wants to come in for a change of organization, a sphere update, they pay for it. And if it requires an MSR, they pay for it. But willy-nilly, it's LAFCO's obligation to set the sphere of influence. And do the MSR. It's clear. It doesn't say it's the cities or the counties. Likewise, having the county, or not the county, a district do MSR is inappropriate. It's like the fox in the hen house. So, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I know what you mean, but maybe you are confusing the intention here. Not arguing the point of whose responsibility is to do it.
Yeah.
But there isn't any thing that I'm aware of that precludes LAFCO from requiring that district or entity to be responsible for paying for the creation of that document. I mean, this was a policy direction that that the two of you have presented. So
Yeah, and you are right. It's a policy option. It's exactly true. Is that LAFCO can adopt a policy. We're not going to do any more of these things until a district ponies up the money to pay for it. That can happen. But guess what? Nobody's going to do it. And so we'll become out of compliance. And I could see us subject to a legal challenge on that because we haven't completed our mandatory obligation to do the MSR. I can see that happening from the other side.
Okay. So your staff's opinion is no longer that precludes that responsibility if it's a co-terminant sphere to update it? Because that was the direction the staff had previously given to the commission.
The law clearly places the responsibility on LAFCO to prepare MSRs and sphere updates every 5 years. That's the law. And so we have that obligation, we have to fulfill it. Now, it says updating the spheres as necessary. So there are situations we have to complete an initial update and MSR. And then after that, the determination of whether it's necessary to make any changes to that MSR and sphere every 5 years. That can be much more limited because in many cases, particularly these small districts that don't grow, there's really not much reason to do a full MSR update and sphere update because it isn't necessary. So a lot of the time, that's not going to be necessary. And certainly when we look at cities, there actually are provisions in Cortese-Knox-Harrisburg that says cities may apply for sphere updates. And in most cases, most of the LAFCOs I represent, the LAFCOs try and coordinate with the city's general plan updates, which are also periodically required, so that we can all use the same environmental document and piggyback off it and minimize cost. So in many cases, LAFCO uses a sphere update document that the city has prepared. And that's because that's the most efficient way to do it. And I believe that is a perfectly legal way to do it, as long as the LAFCO itself understands that it is the final decision maker with respect to the sphere. So we're trying to walk this delicate balance of fulfilling our mandatory responsibility to do these, but do it in the most efficient fashion.
Okay, so if I can ask another question, then let's use the city of Clearlake as an example. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they do not have a sphere of influence right now, or essentially it's coterminous with the city boundary.
Yeah, it's an old sphere of influence that's, I think it's actually a little larger than the boundary, but it's an old sphere of influence. The city is right now doing its general plan. They just released a notice of preparation this week. And we've got a draft service review sitting on the city manager's desk. Again, sending to the agency first. And so we, so anyway, that's the process. So this is all going to coalesce at one point, the general plan and the MSR. We want to use, affirmly, or use the, if possible, the EIR findings to support the sphere of influence update. Whether or not it's the same, larger, or smaller, we need to use the, we just can't say, well, it's exempt.
So, well, the city isn't going to adopt a sphere of influence that's smaller than its existing boundary.
Well, the LAFCo adopts that. They're probably not going to detach territory from the city limits.
So,
they're not going to propose it. They can veto that anyway.
So are you saying that, let's just assume, well, is the general plan, the new general plan update, proposing an expanded sphere of influence boundary?
I don't know. I just received the NOP and I haven't looked at all that yet.
Okay, so
I've got 30 days. I'm going to plan on doing response.
If the existing sphere of influence in essence doesn't exist for the city of Clearlake, there's coterminous with the city boundary, you are saying that you still need to do an MSR?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was a case that Sam Hansen did. There was a case. We have to evaluate this in an EIR. It has to be evaluated in an EIR anyway to support the sphere. Yeah, and even if it's coterminous in the status quo, then that's what it is.
So there's no proposed growth, there's no time period for that. We still have to do a review of that.
If there's no, well, we have, well, I guess I'm not getting the question.
Well, the question is, if you don't have a sphere of influence, if it's existing with the city boundaries, I'm trying to, I feel like I'm getting different messages on whether any review is required. Is an MSR required? Is CEQA review required to adopt? Essentially, you don't have a sphere of influence.
To update or to update a sphere of influence or to establish when an MSR is required. And in this case, the city of Clearlake, we're updating MSR, so an MSR is required.
And if the sphere proposed for the city involves inclusion of undeveloped land, then some sort of CEQA analysis is also required.
I understand. Okay. I don't know. I guess I would just reaffirm the board's recommendations and request that the commission look at this further. I feel like that we're really getting conflicting stories here on this, and maybe it would be good to revisit this and have some specifics come from staff on their recommendations on this that we can look at.
I think you and I need to clarify, because I'm really not 100% understanding, and I just need to clarify with you, and we can always discuss, we can bring that back for further discussion. I think it's, we're talking about, and but I just need to have a one-on-one with you after the meeting. We can talk about it. So I know I clearly understand.
I have a question.
Okay, hold on just a second. I've got 4 different people that want to speak.
Oh, you do?
I do.
I didn't know.
And Jeff was first.
After the chat.
He's been waiting for like 10 minutes.
I don't have a chance with him.
This is something we've discussed for years on this particular item, and the item really is the fact that we know we have to do MSRs when they're required to be done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But we've talked about this particular item for a long time, that if it's over and above what it would normally cost us to do the typical MSR.
Then the city should pay.
Then we pass
I think now I'm getting
the cost along.
Absolutely.
If it is the normal MSR that everybody else is getting, then it's fair. Everybody's doing it, everybody has to do it. That's the typical MSR. If there's anything at all that's over and above, the entity that triggers that over and above pays that over and above cost.
Okay, thank you for
That's a clear way of putting it.
I mean, it's that simple.
Okay, Stacy?
Thank you.
Well, I was just going to ask, what prompted a review of the procedures to come up with that? Is it because our procedures are so old, or because something's not working, or why is this on the agenda?
Yeah, all of the above, and it's the issue of whether or not you want a service review committee. We have a service review committee for the purposes of the Watershed Protection District MSR, which is one thing. Another thing is, do you want to have a service review committee for every MSR? And that's another issue. My recommendation on the latter would be no. We don't need a service review committee for every MSR we do. I don't think there's any other mistake. It just runs into more money. And
why do we have a committee if nobody else is doing a committee?
I thought at the time in 2008 that when the notion of an MSR committee was to be established, that it was a really good idea until I saw the backstabbing, the going to the state of what happened in Calaveras County. And over the years, I really got sour on the notion of committees. Then I started to think about, okay, well, we've got a committee here. They presented a whole bunch of information. I've got it all. It's all getting put into a document, the service review, not in this much detail, but in this much detail, that there are issues. We're shedding a light, and that's what we're doing. But then I'm confronted with a bunch of conflicting methodology. Should the service review go to the service review committee first? And I'm of the opinion it should go to and the commission is of the opinion that it should go to the agency first.
Okay,
so
if we don't have the committee, we can still get all the information and still get all the public input, but not have some of the negatives that we run into.
Right, you get it at a public hearing. That's what all the other LAFCos do. And occasionally, I hear it all the time that you do a public hearing. You send a notice out to everybody who requests a notice or a copy of the document so they can review it. And even before, in certain cases, like if it were a cemetery district service review, we probably would just have a public hearing, but like something like the Watershed Protection District or more complicated districts, we would have a workshop first, and the public would be invited to come and give comments on a draft or something or content that should be in the MSR, and there'd be concurrence, and we would amend anything we've done. So, yeah.
Okay. Did you have something you want to say? No. Okay. Go ahead, Suzanne.
One of the things that I'd like to bring up is I don't think you've got people knocking each other down trying to get on a committee to do an MSR. And I think that if you're going to do one in a cemetery district, you probably don't have a lot of people who are interested. But one of the things about this municipal service review is that there are a lot of questions that are getting answered. I've been involved in a lot of the watershed protection issues for a long time. But as Betsy said, I never read this document, which is the causes and control of outflow blooms in Lake County. And I think that most of the people that are on this commission haven't read it either. The aquatic weed management plan, I hadn't read that. There's a lot of information that I'm getting that I think is really important. And I think that the commissioners on these commissions ought to have this kind of information. And I think that if the impetus of getting it is being on a committee that does something like a review of a district, that's important public information and outreach. And I don't, if it makes somebody mad, well, almost anything you do is going to make somebody mad about something. But I don't think that's what this is about. I don't think that anybody is out there trying to go, eh. I think people are going, We want to know what our money is being spent for and what it's doing. And I think that the public has a right to know that.
Somebody else on the commission? Okay. Betsy?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to get back to some of the, just a couple of little minor points.
No, I understand. We try to be concise because in the interest of time, you know, we've already spent an hour and a quarter on this.
This is an incredibly important environmental issue to every resident in Lake County.
I'm not saying it's not.
So spend a couple more minutes, please. First of all, the Record B is the county newspaper of record according to the government code. It publishes the Observer. So if you do not put it in the newspaper of record, you're in violation of that public notice law. That's number one. That's what the rule says. Being a volunteer for the County of Lake on their Quacker Muscle program, I had to waive liability, and I have served as a volunteer for many organizations here without ever having the question of my liability for any kind of damage or any problem like that. And the committee itself was actually created back, I believe, in 2009. As you know, Ed, you and John and I met in Kelseyville and had a cup of coffee. It was only because I was working to help John locally get information that was too costly to obtain if he drove up here to meet with these organizations. I interviewed the cemetery district managers, the boards of their boards of directors. I worked on getting information that was very valuable to this commission on the Clearlake Oaks County Water District, if you recall. That was a big difficulty. Some of the stuff that I did for the Upper Lake County Water District was precedent setting. We have an area of concern that is the only district in the county that has one. Red Bud Healthcare District, I worked with their board to great effect and continue to work with them on senior services and other related community issues. So being a volunteer and actually working, I don't care whether you have a committee or not, you know I'm not going away. That's one thing. And you know I understand a lot of this complexities. I understand the county is really reluctant to look at this district for some reason. And if I wrote you a 100-page list of the questions that we have not gotten answers to, you would grade it. But we've asked politely. We're not a renegade group of fools. We're actually trying to conduct the public's business to serve the public in the whole county, and that's what your job is. It's not to protect an agency from scrutiny. Thank you.
All right. So, we've had a nice long discussion about this. I guess the real question today is, do we wish to take any action? When everybody speak at once.
As far as having committees to study MSRs, that should be at our discretion when we feel we need to assign. And it serves a specific purpose, and what that purpose is accomplished, then it's over. I don't believe we need to have a standing one to review all. I think that's a pretty simple, straightforward thing to do. It's as needed. We need one, we do one. We don't, we don't. And it's our decision, it's our responsibility to determine if we need one. And public opinion, if we have felt we don't need one, public opinion, not public opinion, public statements are going to give us facts that we did not have in evidence before. We need to form what we're going to do.
Okay. Yep.
Well, first, I want to clear up one thing that Mike said about public notification. Are we doing public notification as required by law when we have public hearings and public?
Yes.
Okay, we could go over and above and send every person in Lake County a notice. But the reason, the reason we don't do that is because, again, of the cost, and that's why the code recognizes that, and we put it, when it's a countywide issue, actually I think we go as far as putting it in, well, I know that, for one thing, if something is in Middletown, we publish it in the Times-Star. And if there's something in Clearlake, we publish it in the Observer. And if there's something in Lakeport or other surrounding areas, I know that this is the way the county does it. We publish it in every paper that is required for us to publish it.
Right, the Times-Star, I don't think is a paper of record, so I have
Right,
to
but we-
publish it in the record be anyway.
But if we have something in Middletown, we usually publish it there
An
anyway.
issue down there, we wanted to make sure that,
Yeah, the people know.
So we usually go over and above what's even required by law, but to get to every public person, the only other way to do it is by U.S. mail. And U.S. mail is just doggone expensive to try to get, to that level. It's not ever done, because then once you start it, where do you draw the line on what's important to some people and not to others? So as far as that goes, I know we do public notices that are required by law, and that's what we have to do, is follow the law. So I just want to make sure we cleared that part of it up, that, we're doing, because you said to us, why aren't you doing your job? Well, we're doing it, what's required by law. And we could go over and above that, but then it's costing the taxpayers money also. And actually, it's everything we do costs the taxpayers money, because that's where it all comes from. So I just want to make sure we clear that up, that, we're doing it according to the law.
I do have a comment, since Betsy's out of the room. No, she should be here. But there's a difference. There's a committee and there's volunteers. And I do want to mention that the people that work on the MSR committee are also volunteers. So this MSR committee is a formal structure, which I don't really think is needed, but I think the volunteers that I've gotten good input from all of them throughout the process. And that, like Betsy, especially, she has done a lot of work, like the Cemetery District MSRs. I got a job for her after the meeting. But the volunteers, like Mike, has given a lot of good input. I mean, there's some good input that has come in there. But it doesn't have to be a structured committee. It can be volunteers. I've got 3 people that I have relied upon for a lot of stuff. And especially Betsy, I've really got to say that she's really done, a lot of work. But it shouldn't be a formal structure of the commission. I think if you're going to have committees, it needs to be commission members only on your budget committee, on any committee. But you can rely on volunteers' help. My only one issue with volunteers is, okay, somebody's a volunteer and I got them doing something, and they're not doing something. What is our liability? That's the only issue I have. And I'm not going to doubt the quality of what I've seen her do. It's been very good. It has been very good. I mean, some of it she might get a little zealous at times, but that's all verified throughout the process. It's part of it. But I think that if you have the watershed volunteers or the fire volunteers, like I say, I've got a job for her. So, I mean, that's fine too, and that helps, and it's cost effective, and rather than a formal committee, I just know what happened in the other counties, and it could happen here, and I just don't want to have that happen. I just think of a volunteer that, somebody's volunteered to do something, they go and interview the cemetery districts. Well, that's fine. But there's a difference.
Jeff, you have something else on your mic? You wanted to say something?
Yeah. I have no doubt, same thing, she's out of the room, so I'll say this so it doesn't make her head any bigger, is the fact that she knows more about the watershed protection district, the lake, I think, than anybody else in the county does. I really do, because
absolutely,
she has studied that stuff. It's unbelievable the amount of time and effort she's put into it. And what people understand is that I can safely say she knows more about that issue than I do. But I have 50 issues to deal with, not just 1 or 2. And that's why when somebody takes something like she has taken it to the degree she's taken, it's unbelievable the knowledge she has on every aspect of the lake issue. And I commend her for that. She's got the time and energy to spend on that 1 or 2 issues she's dealing with, or 3 or 4 issues. But us on the board and the city council and stuff, we've got, 50 issues or 100 issues we've got to be looking at and try to divide our time between all those, smaller pieces too. So it's great to see somebody that's got that much time and energy to put into that, because she'd be the go-to person to ask almost any question there is to ask about it.
And she doesn't know she's going to find out.
Oh, yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, I know.
So,
So, there's a lot of value there, and I don't think it should be thrown out. These people have done a lot of time involved in this so far as a committee, but as individuals also, and that should be recognized.
but I still don't feel like interviews with certain things, I'm sorry, but that's your job. Because there's a loss of translation there too, in some instances.
Right, that is one example. There's certain things that are my job, and then there's certain things that aren't my job.
Then you can delegate.
That I can delegate.
Right.
But yeah, interviewing, typically, like our directive was I meet with the staff first, and then, like the fire chiefs, I meet with them first, tell them what we're going to do, and then I'm going to come back at the later fire chiefs meeting and say, well, here's what we've done. And meanwhile, I might send Betsy on a fact-finding mission or somebody to bring the information back. But yes, there's certain protocols, who does what and when and where. Anyway, so there is a difference between volunteers and committees. And committees is what I have some issues with in general, not volunteers.
Okay, Mike, you wanted to add something?
Actually, two quick things. One, on the issue of, whether or not you're meeting the legal requirement for public dissemination of the fact that there's going to be a meeting or a hearing, it's never a question. Is there something more that can be done without mailing? Yes. The public's already spending the money. It's in the corner right over there behind you. Okay? Somebody could do a public service announcement that gets broadcast on the PEG channel. All right? How much would that cost? Walk in there and do it. Or film it on video at home. John can sit in his office at home and do it. And that can go out for free. Now, I don't own a TV, so I don't watch that either. You're still not reaching me. You're going to get to me with an email or call me. My other question would be directed to this commission's attorney at the moment. If there's going to be a subcommittee meeting, are you going to notice the public for that? Or are you only going to notice the public if there is a meeting of the entire commission? Where, at what point are you going to ask for the public input? The less you ask, the less you're going to get.
Well, I think that part of it, though, as far as subcommittee stuff, all boils down to the subcommittee comes to the main committee, and that's where the ultimate business is done, and that's the time for the public input there. But any subcommittee or any other committee that meets, public are invited to any of those. And I think
we need to know about it. That's my point. Somehow we need to know about it. So,
And I think that's why, we try to make announcements during our calendars as board members, as city councils do too, to let them know that, this is coming up this week. That's another reason we do that. But I understand what you're saying. It's just, it seems like it's so tough to get the word out all the time. Well, you can see by the amount of people that attend this meeting and the amount of people that attend really hot topics at the board of supervisors and the city council. It's tough to get people out to do that.
Well, quit talking about dope so much and maybe somebody will show up.
God, that would be a dream.
That would be a blessing.
Okay, listen, to try to move this along, my question to the commission is, do we want to take any action today about any of the items we've discussed? Jim has suggested, that we have, we may want to form a committee for a specific task, for a specific MSR, and when that job's done, the committee's job's done, and the committee is disbanded. Well, right now, we only have one committee. And I guess the question is, do we want, are they done? Are they nearly done? Are they still working? Do we want them to continue? Do we want to say thank you for all the information you've put together? And good job, and you're done. And what do we want to just not do anything?
I just have one question. If you want to say the committee's disbanded and it's done, as a member of the committee, I'd kind of like to have a heads up. I understand from what John said that somebody's already writing this MSR, and I understand what you're saying you want it to go to the district before it goes to anybody else. But as a person who's worked on this, I'd kind of like to know what it's going to say, because if there's things in here that didn't get included, as a person that's worked on it, I'd like to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't in there.
Ditto.
Sure. Well,
So if we ended the committee today, would they have the chance to do that?
Well, there was direction you gave me last time to send the MSR to the county first. Okay, there's that.
to the agency.
Then there's this notion of having a committee at all, and then there's this notion that there are 3 or 4 volunteers that have dedicated a lot of time, two of which sit on the commission and 2 do not. I'm not sure if Maurice was appointed formally or not, but we'll recognize him also. So there's that. I think the volunteers are invaluable. And so the question becomes is, should I send the MSR and meet with the 5 individuals before we send it to the county? So the protocol in the past is we always went to the districts. You know, I didn't send it to anybody else before the district got it. And I saw a problem in another county where that happened. But that doesn't mean it will happen here. That was a special circumstance anyway. So, you know, it's a question of how you want the process to go. You know, we've had some people that have injected a lot of ideas into the process. So should it go to the county first, or should it go to the folks that sat on the committee? Whether or not they're a formal committee, you know, doesn't matter. But so what do you want to do? So you see, the conundrum is what's the chicken and the egg here? I don't know.
Right.
I need help.
Okay, let's see. Jim first. And then
Well, it would appear our protocols have been that they went to the agency first. And it's not finalized when it goes to them. It's not finalized until it comes back to the commission, correct?
Right.
So why would it not be appropriate? I don't believe it's a good idea to completely change the protocol. But go to the agency, and then if we have a committee, then after it's gone to the agency, or at the same time it can go to the committee. I don't believe we need to change the protocol. I don't think that's wise.
I agree.
You let it go to the committee for their comments at the same time, but you can just go to the agency.
It comes back here, and then the committee would have a chance at that time to for input.
Okay, and so it would, using that scenario, I would send it out to in this case, the watershed, the county, the 3 or 4 people that were on the committee, or 5 people, and then solicit input, and then produce a draft. My only issue is
that doesn't make sense to me. Now, I've had a personal secretary, and over a course of a couple of years, was able to develop a relationship that, and I say draft a letter that says this, but I still looked at the draft. So I'm kind of confused about how you can have a protocol that says to your executive director, go ahead and send this out on our behalf. We don't know what it's going to say, but we'll deal with it when it comes back.
well, let me just respond to that, and then you're up, Jerry. But I think we do have a lot of faith in our executive director, and frankly, I would rather wait and get the comments if the agency reviews the draft and says there's something wrong, or the facts are wrong, or they want to, dispute something, I would rather know that when it comes to me. In other words, I'd rather wait and have the agency review it first before I engage. But you're right, at least I'm speaking for myself, and I know some of the other long-term commissioners who've worked with John for a long time, we do have a lot of things. Jerry?
It's not that I don't have faith in John, right? In the interests of efficiency, I have to agree that it seems like if the subcommittee is part of this group, we appointed them, they're part of our information gathering system. And to not utilize that prior to going to the agency with our report seems like inefficient. We may be missing something that we should put in the initial report to the agency. And it would only take a quick meeting with John and the subcommittee to go through what the recommendations are, and then go to that agency.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I'm
electronic.
More than one way to skin this cat, I guess.
Mr. Chair. I apologize, I'm going to have to leave because I've got the report to the lynching court for that.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So, Mr. Tom Stockwood, you have to meet right now?
In 5 minutes.
Okay.
Give me direction, just tell me.
I know.
Let's try to get something here before Jim has to leave.
Jerry, you mentioned a quick meeting. It wouldn't be a quick meeting, that's for sure. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And because I know there's going to be a lot of points that maybe John may disagree with. And as far as I'm concerned, Mike, you make a good point. Maybe that would be made clear to the department that the commission is not sitting yet. We're looking for your comment before I send it to the commission. That's what we've pretty much always done. You've always either met with them or whatever to go over points that you may have missed or whatever. But this particular one is going to take multiple meetings. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I just know it's going to. So I would like to get everything rolling, get the, for one thing, the committee needs to see the draft too, to see if things weren't covered or were covered before it goes anywhere. Any district or whatever needs to review it too to make sure that there's things in there that either were missed or whatever, or that were totally unfounded or whatever, to get it hashed out. And then bring it before us, and that's where the district comes, meets with us. The committee will be here to meet with us, and we can then hash it all out as there's going to be things that I'm sure that will be brought up that maybe the committee may say, well, this needs to be in there, and John goes, well, no, typically it's not, and it's going to be left up to our board to decide anyway, what's in or out or whatever. So I think, we should do it the way we've done it in the past. The committee gets a copy, the department gets a copy, and they're made known that this is a draft that has come from our executive director, and the commission has not seen or approved or anything else yet. This is a draft. And then it comes before us as a working group to all get together and work out all the details that we may want to change. And then we change it with everybody in the room to where when we make the changes, they're agreed upon. And we don't have to take another step to try to change it again.
Yeah, make it clear that it's a preliminary draft. It's not a final draft.
Okay.
It's like the first.
Totally concur.
Okay. So do we have a consensus on that?
Yes.
Anybody want to argue about that?
Okay.
Jerry?
It seems to me that the subcommittee is important as a part of this group, that we need to work out our differences with that subcommittee prior to any meeting with any other group, any other agency or district, before we all come together. We need to be in agreement with a subcommittee, what we're going to state, what our findings are, and then go from there, but not enter into a large group where the subcommittee is opposed to this larger group. That doesn't look good to the public, I don't think. I think we need to resolve those issues prior to meeting as a larger group or a public hearing, whatever.
You know, to me, that's where committees get confused with the main commission. That they are a subcommittee or an advisory committee to this commission. And that's as far as it goes. We take into consideration everything they say, because they've researched certain things further, and then we boil it down to one point. But, and that's one reason that some subcommittees have, and I can name probably a half dozen of them in the past, that ended up being dissolved because of the fact that they were given the impression they're in control, and what they say is the gospel, and we have to go along with them. They're an advisory committee, and they're out there to do some of the research that we either don't have time to do, or to really look at it with another set of eyes, and then try to balance it all out. And I think that's where it gets real tough and confusing. And, you know, I guess I'm going to stick with what I suggested. I understand exactly what you're saying, but it's a tough situation sometimes when you're dealing with.
Well, I know Commissioner Comstock asked me, so John this agenda item is asking for directions.
That's what I want. Okay, so we're keeping the committee, and I'm going to send the MSR out to the committee and to the county or department agency. This is the committee just for the watershed protection MSR. We can talk about committees for other things later. I do intend to use Betsy for a volunteer if she's willing to do it, but for other things. Okay, so they both get the MSRs. I'll meet with the committee in about a month, thereabouts, to give everybody a chance to absorb all this. Then I will have the department's or agency's comments by then, and what we'll end up doing, the committee is reconciling all of this for presentation to the commission. And if we can't reconcile it, it's you're the deciders. And that's what will happen.
Okay. Do we need, just asking Scott, do we need a motion for this, or is consensus direction good enough for this?
It would always be better to have a motion.
Okay. I would entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
So moved. Sure.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Thank God. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. You are excused. Have a nice State County address.
I will. Double chicken lunch.
Yeah.
I'd like to say it was a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Before you close this item, and at the risk of being labeled even more annoying than you think I already am, but you know that's impossible. Thank you. At least to the county, you know, the committee issue, that's what's been primarily discussed here, is the secondary issue to some of these other things that are on the agenda.
But you would like us to
and
pursue
we're not
co-chairman
going away, and it goes to Stacy's comment about what brought this up. Well, you know, at least to my knowledge, this has been discussed before the commission on and off for over 2 years. And we still haven't, I mean, I feel like the direction and recommendation from staff have changed in that time, and I would just respectfully request that your commission give staff some direction in hopes of resolving this issue.
Okay. Well, I think we ought to schedule that discussion maybe for our next meeting.
So we're still going to talk about our policies?
I don't have a policy.
We're going to keep talking about it?
Well, Alan has, you know, he wants us to revisit this particular issue that was addressed in this letter.
Right.
Do you want to do that today?
You can, it's not on the agenda.
Yeah, it is on the agenda.
It is, it's actually, it could be included under this item,
Okay.
which is continued from November 20th. Review and amend as determined, the procedural guidelines established for the committee. We will get with the committee, but this has to do with our guidelines, I guess.
Well, right, the agenda item is to review and amend the local procedural guidelines.
Right.
And we still haven't done anything with that. So, we brought it back from November. We've given direction for what's currently on the table, but we still haven't done anything with this. Do we want to bring it back again and talk about the procedures again, or are we good with the procedures that we have currently?
Commissioners, anybody want to respond?
There's a few things we need to do in changing the procedures that I can see resulting from today's discussion. I need to write something in the procedures with respect to the committee. And with this, I don't think we've got anything really written. These are policy alternatives we wrote and at one point. And I think we need to write them into our policy as we determine. But I'm not prepared to give you an alternative today.
Okay.
That would have to be continued. But as far as today's action, you simply took action with respect to the how we're going to process the watershed protection MSR. And these other issues, City of Lakeport, well, Lakeport I think is a whole other issue. But as far as I'm concerned, I can see the City of Lakeport is doing exactly what we asked them to do. So, but with respect to CEQA and additional land being requested to be placed into the sphere of influence, we ought to have a policy regarding that. And who's going to pay for it? Because rather than me saying, well, by the way, I need $10,000 to do this, and not have any policy to back it up.
Okay, so
You know, so I think that's a separate issue that can happen at the next meeting. I think we're running a fire on it.
And you'll write up some...
We'll write up the policy. I'll talk to Alan and you know, the both city managers, I guess, or whoever, other administrators around here I can find. And just to kind of get a kind of a staff consensus of what's going on, maybe a couple district managers.
You okay with that, Stacey?
Yeah.
But I'm really okay with it. If there's additional stuff in it, that somebody should pay for it, not us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, then let's move on.
Okay, done.
Item 6, California within limits. This is
this is some light reading. Do all of you have a copy? You got a copy, Mike, of California within limits? I'll give you a copy. This is a white paper that Peter Detweiler presented at the LAFCo conference, and he re-presented it at the LAFCo symposium that took place last December. And the reason, the value it has, is it gives you the history of LAFCO. And that, you know, like Peter was saying, that he would wish to have somebody to write a book on LAFCO boundary, the notion of LAFCO boundaries, or boundaries of agencies in California since the Roman times. I mean, that's a whole other story. But I really think that this is an easy read. It gives you a kind of an in-depth look at what the boundary history is. And there's, of course, other publications out there. There are the our policies we have, and there's the what's it's time to draw the line. What's so special about special districts is another one. I should put all these on the website. I think I've got electronic copies of all of them. The service review guidelines have some valuable stuff in it, even though the problem with them is that they're old and nobody had written they were written in a void because nobody had actually done an MSR practice. So, but they can be put on I could just have like a publications section, and then I'll just refer you to it, and you can go to them when I get that together. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Thank you. I'll read it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I please have a comment on this subject?
Yes.
Thank you. I did read this, and it's quite informative. I think you'll enjoy it. In particular, it refers to the actual oversight responsibilities of LAFCOs, including review of programs. And that is one of those particular constituents of the Watershed Protection District that is missing, because over the years of participating in county discussions about spending for individual projects, there has been little discussion of actual programs. And one of the issues that arose in the discussion earlier was about reorganization. If you're providing new services. New services were added in 2004 to the Watershed Protection District responsibilities that did not exist prior to that. And so those capacities to serve those needs has not been defined. But mostly it's the idea that LAFCo does have oversight over such things. And as well, that LAFCO has responsibilities as an arm of the state. It has a legislative, it's a quasi-legislative body, and it is there to implement the state's laws. So this is quite an extensive understanding of you're operating as the legislature's agent, and in using their delegated powers, LAFCOs can do what the legislature itself can do, and what includes bringing special districts into existence and control where and when the districts provide facilities and deliver public services. And that again goes to this issue of our sphere and our physical management capacity. So I think this is really well worth understanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on this document? Now we'll move along to the next item. This is establishing our meeting schedule for the upcoming year. On the back page for the meeting schedule. Anybody have any problems with this? Comments? As you can see, we alternate between Clearlake and Lakeport, meet on a bi-monthly basis. Okay, I don't hear any comments. Any public comment?
We need a motion on
How about, yes, we need a motion.
Jerry, I make a motion that we adopt regular alternate
Jerry,
schedule.
move, Frank, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Executive officers report.
Yes, I had an issue. I just want to explain this. Ever since 2001, that there's been a requirement for agencies to come to LAFCO if they're going to provide services outside jurisdictional boundaries. And I had an interesting call from the Caleomi Water District about the state as a condition of approval of a water grant for the district that they would require that all of these areas be annexed. And so I said, okay, that's great. I talked to him. So I emailed the guy, the regulator at the state, and I said, give me a section of the code where it says that. I wanted to see the law. Well, he got back to me with 56-133, which is the LAFCo law. And I said, hey, most of these out-of-area agreements within Caleomi have been grandfathered in, and there was one afterwards which we LAFCO allowed. So, so basically it was, I kind of neutralized that, but my concern is the state now coming back and telling everybody, in addition to the LAFCO law, that these guys have to be, that to get water grants, so they all have to be within the jurisdictional boundaries. So that's a question I think the regional board is going to have to look at. Or I'm sorry, DPH. Is it who does the water? DPH?
Yeah, public health.
Yeah, DPH. So anyway, that's just an issue that's out there, and but don't quote me the LAFCO law because they were grandfathered in. So I mean, they're legal as far as I'm concerned. The city of Clearlake and service review, I'm working with the city manager on that, Clearlake. The fire service review, I've been prodding, and I almost have the information to actually do something. So that's good, and so I'm working on that. The Watershed Protection Service review, survey review here, well, you already know about that. The RCD service review, that's getting started as a separate review, and Dan Obermeyer is working with me on that. And dissolution of a reclamation district is, well, actually that's under correspondence, so I'll talk to you about that later.
Okay. Any comment? Next up would be commissioners' reports. Anybody have anything exciting to report? How about something dull and boring to report? Already had that. Okay. Well, then we'll move along to correspondence.
There's two things, is that I got a request from the county, is that since the county has purchased all the property within RD 2070, is that I've got a notice of intention to they forward it to LAFCo, and I'm reporting it now, that to dissolve the reclamation district.
Which district, please?
2070.
Can you tell me where that is? Is it Edmondson or Scotts Valley or?
Upper, middle, up.
The Little Creek Restoration?
Let's see here.
Well, there's two over there, Suzanne.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. You can tell by the map. I'm not sure.
We don't have a map.
Oh, it's near Rodman Slough, just north of Rodman Slough.
That's probably the Edmondson. So do you have an actual letter from the county to do that?
I have a notice of intention.
From the county?
Right, and what will happen is the county will initiate it via a resolution, and they'll place that on their board agenda at one point. Actually, it will mention the date, January 28th at 9:15 at the Board of Supervisors.
And that actually should be a resolution of the Watershed Protection District Board of Directors?
It is...
just so you know.
The Watershed Protection District, right. Board of Supervisors Act. And then the other item I have is a notice of preparation for an environmental impact report for the city of Clearlake, general plan. That's it.
Any comments? Last chance? Okay.
Could you maybe post those on the LAFCo website for us?
Absolutely. As soon as I can scan them and put them on.
Thank you, that would be very helpful.
And there being no further business, we will adjourn. The Wednesday, March 19th,